Good evening to all of you. Good evening to everyone who has joined in. And good evening to you, Tanushree.
Good evening, Sajita, and good evening to everyone who's joined us today for the discussion.
Yes, so Tanushree Podder, as we all know, is a very prolific writer. And today we'll be discussing her book, The Girls in Green. But before that, let me just introduce Tanushree to you all, for the viewers who have tuned in. Born in New Delhi, Tanushree worked in the corporate sector for 8 long years before she quit the rat race to write. A well known travel writer and novelist, she is passionate about traveling and writing. Climate change and the environment are of special interest to her. Tanushree enjoys writing in various genres. This has led to her writing in historical, military, crime, and paranormal genres. She has written non-fiction books before moving to fiction and has published 15 novels. Among her books are Nurjahan's Daughter, Boots Spells Berries, On the Double, Escape from Harem, Solo in Singapore, A Closet Full of Skeletons, Before You Breathe, No Margin for Error, The Teenage Diary of Rani Lakshmi Bai, The Girls in Green, Spooky Stories, and An Invitation to Die. Two more are scheduled to be published before the end of 2022. Decoding the Feronia Files, written by her, is the first Indian climate fiction thriller. And three of her books, Boots, Bells, Berries, A Closet Full of Skeletons, and The Girls in Green, are being adapted into web series. She lives in Pune. So today
Thank
we
you,
have
Sajita. Thank you.
that was a very impressive. Also a lot of achievements.
Very long, a very long intro. But
No,
I just must
but
say,
someone with that level of achievement requires a long intro.
oh my, thank you so much for your kind words. But I must thank Kalinga Litfest for having us together today
Yes,
and giving us the opportunity to speak about the girls in green.
yes, certainly, yes. So this is a book, The Girls in Green, that we'll be discussing today. And this is a very special book. This is about hardly. I mean, this is the first time anyone has attempted writing such a thing. This is about women cadets training at the OTA, and this is very special to me because I myself was a girl in green some time ago, and I could relate with everything that Tanushree has written in the book, and I could relate to every page. In fact, in fact, every word. So tell us, Tanushree. How did you get this inspiration to write this book?
Sajita, as you are aware, my husband was in the army, and I've
Yes.
had a long brush with the army, and also my brother-in-law was in the navy. So you can say a lot of defense people, like my cousin was in the Air Force, and he died, of course, in a crash.
Oh,
And I sort of have a very warm affinity and contact with the forces. And of course, being an army wife, I have always had a soft corner for this thing.
all
And
right.
my journey into the armed forces books started a long time back. But the Girls in Green came about because I met a lot of women officers over these last few years, and almost everyone kept asking me, why haven't you written about us? You have written about the men in the army, but we
Right.
have also been doing the same duties, performing the same kind of, same level of training is required. We perform the same duties. So why haven't we found a place in your books? And then, it set me thinking, and I realized that yes, I have faulted. I should have written something. But even then, the story didn't occur to me, and I didn't have any concrete ideas. And then I watched the Republic Day parade, and I saw this young captain, and I was so impressed because she was leading an entire contingent of men, and she was so smart. And then I said, oh my, it's time I really wrote a book. And that's how The Girls in Green came about. And of course, you have always been my first choice while discussing this book, because I know you have been in the army, and I also know that you have written a book about your army experience. And for all those who don't know about it, Sajita's book, she's a very good fellow, is really interesting, and it's a humor filled book, just like The Girls in Green. So she's always my first choice to, host such a show.
Thank you so much, Tanushree. That's indeed an honor to be your first choice. So tell me, when you wrote these characters, now there are these four interesting characters in the book. So were they inspired by anyone you met in real life, or you just it just fictional characters that you created with their very specific traits? Tell us something about the characters that you have in your book.
Uh, See, though they are all fictional characters, but I haven't, over the period of years, I've met so many people like them in the armed forces as well as outside. And it was a conscious decision on my part to have four girls from four different regions of the country. And I really laid a lot of emphasis on the Northeast sector because they're hardly represented in any of our books. And I really wanted to put in a character from the Northeast. And I happen to have graduated from Shillong.
Okay,
So I did know a lot about that area. So one of the girls that I put there has come from Shillong. That is, Lakme.
Lakme. Yes,
And then we have Bijli Bijarnia, the main protagonist, Billy, who is
right,
from Haryana and an athlete. And she's like, all out to become one of the top cadets in the academy.
right.
Then Shiny Joseph, who is from Kerala and who's a brilliant girl. And then there is, of course, the funny girl called Nati or Nutan, and who comes from Maharashtra. So it was a conscious decision to put those few characters together from various parts. And also, I wanted them to be very different from each other in their characteristics.
Right. Right. Yes, that's why it makes for a very interesting reading because each one is so different, yet they have the same goal to achieve, and how each one of them achieves that goal through the ups and downs, and that forms the most interesting. I mean, the whole book is very interesting, but due to that aspect. And finally, how they emerge seasoned officers after their very tough training. That's really interesting because. When we're talking about women officers now, I think yes. So when we're talking about women officers, and we must talk about something very important that has come up in the recent times. I think it was in August 2021, Tanushree, that your book, The Girls in Green, was released. And soon after, in
Yes.
September 2021, is when the government announced that NDA would now be open to women cadets. So it was a very I mean there was so much of debate and discussion going on about the intake of women or lady cadets to the NDA. What do you feel about it? What's your opinion about it?
You're right. Somewhere around August, there was a huge debate about this factor about the girls being taken in NDA because it had been always been a male domain. And
Right.
I spoke to a lot of boys because being in Pune and NDA being in the same city, I have had the opportunity to mingle with and I stay in an army complex,
Mhm.
so I have ample opportunity to talk about these things with the army people, the veterans and the new officers, as well as the aspiring uh, NDA cadets. And also, I have had the opportunity to speak to the NDA cadets themselves. There was a lot of resentment, no doubt about it. And the cadets, especially, kept saying, it won't be the same thing again, ma'am. I don't know why the government is doing this. And I heard the echo of that uh, statement many, many times. And I was wondering, why is there so much resentment against the women in the NDA? Already, we know that the women have been in the army for long, and yes, this is a new aspect. But then I knew that people would come around and there would be acceptance, just like anything new, sort of is taken with a lot of resentment and doubt initially. But people come around, and I think that's what happened. And we are ready now. This year, the girls enter NDA. They're already in the
Yes.
waiting, and
Yes.
I'm sure they'll train as well and as hard as the boys, and we'll have a new perspective to the whole thing.
Yes, yes. Looking forward to that. So, do you think that the mindsets of the society, I mean, the mindset of the society is has changed or is changing? Or do you think that women officers in the armed forces are treated at par with the male officers? Or do you think there is still some discrimination?
See, we do see, pockets of reservation and, pockets of hesitation among the army, especially among the older crowd, I think. The
Mm-hmm.
newer lot is far more accepting to the idea, and I think they have grown up in a milieu where girls have been seen as, entering the male domains and, sort of blasting into it. So they are more open, but then yet I feel, yes, there is a little discrimination still in the mind. There are still some doubts. Like a lot of people still argue, but you can't have them on night duties. You can't have them patrolling the borders. But then we see the BSF has also taken women, and I was so delighted to see women, these riding camels on the borders, in the
Oh,
borders, of Rajasthan. And that was so delightful because here was a entire new scenario being created by women. And I think
oh,
now that we had the combat pilot
yes,
introduced
fighter
in
pilots.
women
Yes.
section of this thing, now we have had the first woman getting in, so that sort of opens up so many possibilities. And yes, may the best person win, whether it's a man or a woman. And I think most of the training depends on that. The competitive exams are based on that. You don't score just because you're a woman or a man. You have to compete, and so you get the best of the lot, so it doesn't matter. But yes, gender discrimination will be there because our society is patterned on a certain, way of thinking. And there is, those kind of reservations where people think women are not really suitable, and we have a huge population of males. You must have faced that, Sajita,
Initial
being
years,
the
the initial
early,
years. Yes.
yeah, yes, because you were one of the early entrants. So
Yes.
maybe you could throw a light on that.
No, but today is your day, your book. We'll just ask your opinion. So,
So
yeah.
you're being
So,
diplomatic.
no, so continuing on the same line. So let me ask you a question that I have been often asked, and there has been a lot of discussion about that as well. It's about women in combat arms. So right now, women in the army serve in the services, that is the ordnance or EME or signals. But there has been a lot of discussion lately about should women be given combat roles like in the infantry or armored regiment. So I have been asked this question many times, and I'm going to throw this question to you, Tanushree. Let's have your view on whether women should be there in combat roles in the army.
See, once you have entered the army, I think you are prepared for some kind of bigger role. And
Right.
from what I have heard, women also resent that they have not been allowed the combat roles. A lot of women complain about it. So I think we could throw open, bit by bit, maybe some, better combat roles, a little safer kind in the initial this thing to test the grounds, and then go on to, doing it the full-fledged way. But I really don't know what are the repercussions and what are the consequences of such a thing, because there still seems to be a little bit of hesitation on the part of the senior, you
Right, right.
know, hierarchy and all those things are there. And they might feel that, yes, women, again, it boils down to the mindset, you know. The
Mm-hmm.
commanding officer may feel that when I have, say, about 10 men at my disposal, why should I send a woman officer to that part, which is very difficult to handle? I think that would be a reaction that comes out of, a certain mindset. So I think we have a little bit yet to cover before we get to that point.
Right, right. So probably what you're saying is it should be done in a very phased manner, step by step, and see. Right,
Yeah,
right,
we
right.
have been doing that for entrance as well. See, we threw
Yes,
open OTA, then now we
yes.
have thrown out NDA. So it's
Right,
happening in
right,
phased manner. And
right.
same with Air Force, we have had the helicopter fire and the supply
Mm.
planes being flown by women, and now only they have thought of the combat roles. So maybe
Right.
in the army we can look forward to some such thing in the near future.
Yeah. Yes, I think it will happen soon because we have very smart women in our country.
Yes, of course. I agree. Mm.
One very, I mean, there was one aspect in your book when I read, and it made me stop and it made me think. And this was something that Lucky's mother tells her when she gets the joining instruction from the OTA. I will read out that part. Lucky's mother says this: I think there is a mistake. They have sent you a list for boys. There is no mention of any women's garments. So she said this because the joining instruction mentioned white shirt, shorts, trousers, Oxford or brogue pattern shoes, necktie, etc., all of which are traditionally men's clothing. So do you think that we in the society women have been conditioned differently and men have been conditioned very differently? So do you think that women who are joining the army or the armed forces go through some kind of internal conflict or confusion between the conditioning that they have had in the society versus the roles now expected of them? So do you think there is some kind of confusion in their minds or some kind of a conflict?
I really don't think so, because you find so many girls wearing shorts these days all over. Athletes wear it, and it's all over. And if you notice, many of the girls who are joining the army come from the rural belts.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, many of them are from the north, and the most patriarchal societies are, in Haryana and all those areas, and these girls are coming from there. So I really don't think they have hesitation, and now there is so much information available. They know what they're stepping into. So there shouldn't be any confusion. I don't think so.
Okay, I asked this question specifically because I went through this kind of a confusion initially. Perhaps everything has changed now, things have changed, and they probably get a lot more information through internet and through people that they meet. And I'm sure they are much better prepared than we were when we joined sometime in the early 90s.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Uh,
also, if you notice, these days the girls are far more, forthcoming compared to what, say, we were 10 years back. If
right,
you
right,
see,
yes,
10 years back, the girls may not have stepped out wearing shorts and running on the road. But today it is a common sight. Yes, in rural areas, there exists a lot of, patriarchy and, those kind of. But I was just reading about some athletes who used to, get up at the crack of the dawn so that they would be able to run without anyone noticing them, because they had to wear spikes and shorts and all
yes.
that, and the villagers were against it. So I guess women do find a way to circumvent those situations.
Right, right, right. But I think now women should not be looking for ways to circumvent. They should be part of the mainstream and doing just the things that they want to do, they need to do, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yes. Moving on in the same lines now, we've been reading reports of the shortage of officers in the armed forces, especially the army. So, do you think these days youngsters are lured towards money? So, in the battle between the lure of money and the glamour of uniform, do you think the uniform is losing out?
uh you see, people tend to opt for easier lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As human beings, we tend to deviate towards comfort. And definitely, army calls for a lot of discomfort. If you have parties, you also have bad tenures. You also have to serve at the borders where you are, frozen literally, and or the blazing heat of the desert. So there's just no saying, because India is so vast. We have different kinds of borders, and the casualty rates these days, what I see is mostly coming from the militancy. It's not war inflicted. If you say, see the data of the last 10, 20 years, we haven't fought any wars since the Bangladesh, really. but we have had casualties, and they are occurring in peaceful places also. And that's mainly due to militancy. So I think there is a sort of hesitation to put your life at stake. Even
Mm-hmm.
the dazzle of uniform is sometimes not so dazzling. So, and also, you see, what happens is a lot of people don't have the full information. I don't know how many of them really know what the life in army involves. And
Mm-hmm.
I think our book should go a long way towards creating that awareness.
Yes,
And
yes.
hopefully more people, yeah, and hopefully more people will step forward. But if there are women, then it's okay. Maybe we'll have more vacancies for them.
Yes, I think very soon in the future we'll have. Um, now, you have been an army wife and you have spent so many years in the army. And I think you're the best person to advise someone, a young woman. I'm talking about a young woman who would like to join the armed forces. What advice would you give to a young woman who's looking at the army as her career, apart from, of course, reading your book?
Uh, Sajita, I think the girls today are very clued up. They know
Okay.
exactly what they want to do,
Okay.
and they know where they're going. They're very, very bright. And those who are opting for army or harbor the interest in army, to join the army, I think they're very, very well equipped. I would be, not really someone to be able to give them any advice or anything. All I can say is whatever you do, just do it with your full dedication and sincerity. You can never fail. And that is actually a very general kind of an advice. It is applicable to any field that one chooses.
All right. So what would you say about the mental toughness? Do you think that they develop mental toughness in the academy, or is it something that you work towards even before you prepare for joining the army?
I think you need to prepare. You
Okay.
know, you just can't step into a minefield without being prepared for it.
Right. Right.
So you have to know what you're stepping into, because the people who step into an area without knowing what it involves, what their lives would be like, they are the ones who fail to deliver justice and sincerity. And they are the ones who will complain later about the system, about everything. So one has to know what one is getting into. You cannot just, like we cannot become writers without knowing the problems that a writer faces, and there are many. It
Yes.
seems very, very cushy from far, but every
Mhm.
job, every profession has its hazards and the blocks. So you need to be mentally prepared and be very, very tough, mentally and physically. And the
I
rest
think
comes through training,
yes, yes, yes. Also, I think the SSB also does a very good job of, picking up picking
pruning
out
out.
the cadets. Yes, yes, the ones who think who can be trained by in the training academy and can
Yes.
produce the results. All
I
right. So
think,
now we all
there is sorry, I think there is a system by which they know the aptitude of a person. It's not just about your wanting to do it. The SSB people also look at the aptitude one has.
yes, yes. It's a three pronged selection system, and it's foolproof in that they select the candidates who have the aptitude for a career like this. So yes,
Absolutely.
correct.
Mm.
Tanushree, now when you're writing about the army, I know you've written many books, even before the Girls in Green, um, uh, about the army being the main topic, right? So when you're carrying out your research, now I want to know specifically for this particular book, when you did your research for the Girls in Green, you said that you went to the OTA, and uh, could you please tell us something about how did you go about researching?
Yeah, see, I tried to contact as many women officers I could and
Okay.
see if they are available to me for an interview and to speak. And but of course, on ground, you cannot see things unless you are there. So I had to make a visit, and I made two visits, in fact. because just to know what the setup was like, what were
Mhm.
the amenities, what were the living quarters like, what were they, even to see the girls and the boys in action, it's something that you need to experience. It's something absolutely, different. So I did go there. I met a whole lot of OTA
Okay.
cadets, both men and women. I met
Mhm.
a lot of instructors. I spent a full day literally each time. And then I went to the campus. I went into their living quarters, into their rooms, spoke to the girls in the, common room. And, it was such a delightful experience, because apart from collecting information for the book, I was also going through something very, very interesting, to know
Yes.
something which I had not known before, how things go on at the base, at the core of the academy. And then, of course, there was this delightful meal that we had in the canteen, and that plays such a big role in my book. The meeting place and all that. And I saw the girls and boys enjoying themselves, eating, gorging on food, as though there was no tomorrow, when you know that the mess provides such a lot of food to them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
basically, all these experiences come because you get to see it and have a first hand experience of it.
So this is the image that is struck with you, or of the OTA, or is there something else also, something a part of the training that you saw and it remained in your mind as an image that went into your book?
No, I didn't see any such thing that was like, but then
Okay.
the girl who took me around had just
Mhm.
passed out from OTA. She was posted in Chennai,
Okay.
Ordnance, Awadi, and
Right.
she was narrating so much about her experience, and she knew almost everyone around. So I went around with her, and it was a delightful tour, because she kept telling me about a lot of things which otherwise you wouldn't get to know. So I went with two different people on two different occasions, two different officers rather. And
Okay.
each time it was a very different perspective, because once it was a
Oh,
male officer, and the other time it was a women officer. So it was a very different, balanced perspective that I got ultimately. And I really enjoyed my tour through the OTA.
all right. So I think you probably even have you went and saw the oath taking ceremony and the pipping ceremony because you've done it so realistically in your book. Did you? Did you have the opportunity to see the
No,
oath
no,
taking?
not really. Not
Okay.
really. You see,
Okay.
the pipping ceremony and oath ceremony is it's very similar in OTA as well as IMA. And
Okay.
I had a first-hand repeat of what had happened from my husband, who told me what really goes on when they do the pipping and your oath taking and all that. So I derived a lot from that experience also.
All right. Okay. Okay. So now let's get to know Tanushree, the writer. You were working in corporate sector sometime back, and after that you moved to writing. So how did that transition happen from corporate sector to writing? Please tell us about that.
See, I had done my business management, and I was employed as an HR professional for a
Okay.
longish time in the
Mm-hmm.
corporate sector with one of the biggest multinationals in the country.
Okay.
And while it was good, there was always that sense of dissatisfaction that I'm not doing what my heart wants to do. I kept writing on the side, like, that remained a hobby, and I used to write regularly, contribute as a freelancer to various newspapers and magazines. But behind it all, there was a sense of growing disenchantment with the corporate world. And I did realize that, it's not easy to be working full time and then doing justice to something that you love doing. There's always too much of a what you call sacrifice. Either you sacrifice your time and your mental peace, because you're trying to do both things. You
Yes.
really can't, and both are very, very sapping, if you
Yes.
understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
your job saps you. It is not something that you do 9 to 5 and come back home and, sort of just forget about. You do carry, some thoughts about it. And then when you start writing, those thoughts interfere with your writing. So it was
Yes.
getting a little this thing. But what decided me finally was that my husband was transferred. And I realized it was a choice. I could either be with him and live an army wife's life, or I could stay back and lead another life as a corporate sector person, and be frustrated all my life. So I chose to give up everything and follow my heart. And basically it was a tough decision, but a lot of people advised me, no, no, don't do that, that's a wrong thing, you're doing so well in your career. But at the end of the day, I think you need satisfaction, and you
Exactly.
want to do something that you love to do. And I've
Right,
never
right.
regretted. Frankly, I've never regretted it. So it started as a small journey, and over a period of time, it became a passionate journey, which, you always have a next aim and a
Yes,
next goal.
right, right, right. I totally agree that writing can be sapping because it totally absorbs you, and you enter that zone of writing and into a world that you have created, and it can get it. I think it occupies all of your mind space. So it gets.
Absolutely.
So how would you describe yourself as a writer? Would you call yourself very determined or focused or methodical, or you could use any adjective to describe yourself?
I am a very spontaneous writer. I don't know whether that really explains it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a maverick writer, I call myself, because at one given time I have 100 thoughts and a
Oh,
100 ideas, and they're all in different fields, different genres. It's not like, I'm thinking only of military book genre or crime genre. I'm thinking in different, but absolute tangents. The ideas just flow. And then what I do is generally I pick up the one that appeals to me the strongest, and I
okay.
write spontaneously. There are lots of ideas that I've discarded after working, say, for months together on them, because I was finally not very convinced that, okay, I'm doing my best in it. And then I would take up another one. But I work very impulsively, and I'm not a very methodical writer that way. I don't make charts and graphs and work out entire plot at one go. It takes me time, it evolves, my plot goes forward in its own lazy way.
It's
As
not
well.
lazy. It's not lazy at all. It goes at quite a fast pace, I must say.
No, but once it's fixated in my mind, then
Mm.
it takes off.
Okay, okay, okay. So when was your first book published?
My first book, if you're talking about non-fiction, was published way back in 2000. And
Okay.
since then, it has been, a continuous process of growing and growth. And I have gone from one genre to the other, fiction, non-fiction to fiction, and
Mhm.
so on and so forth.
Okay. So this is a very curious question. What did you do with your first writer's advance that you received against your
I
right?
really, I don't remember, but I think, you know what, one thing that I made up my mind to do when I got all the money that I used to get from journalism, freelancing, or whatever, is to put them aside for a special holiday every year. So that was
Oh,
what I think, that money must have also gone into that kitty, because my
okay.
writing account was totally, meant for that purpose.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. See, I heard you like to travel, so you put everything into your traveling.
Yes,
Thing. Okay,
yeah,
good.
that's what.
All right. So now tell us, when you're writing this book, The Girls in Green, how long did it take you? Your research included and your writing included, your editing and everything included. How long did it take for you to write this book?
It was quite a long journey actually,
Okay.
because of I had to make two visits, and in between there were some books. In fact, last year I had three releases, so I
Hmm.
was writing on another book while
Okay.
after I researched for this. There was a break, And then I
Mm-hmm.
came back to Girls in Green. And then once I started writing, I think it took me about 6 to 8 months to finish the
All
book.
right. Okay, okay,
And then,
okay.
of course, there was editing and all those things.
Okay, 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 okay. So, what were the challenges that you faced when you were writing this? Was there any difficult portion that difficult scene probably that you felt it was a little challenging to write? Was there any part in the book that you felt was a little challenging to write?
See, the training part is always a challenge because you have not gone through it.
Yes,
You
yes,
what you are
yes.
writing is, yeah, it is second-hand
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's always challenging to be writing those details, the kind
Mm-hmm.
of long runs and the night,
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
those patrols and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I did have to take a lot of help from my usual source, that is my husband. And
Okay,
of course, I referred to some lady officers also. But those
okay.
were the most challenging part. See, describing the person, describing the characters, and
Mm-hmm.
the daily schedule is much easier. But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the feeling, how people feel when they go through those trainings, which really, really take a lot out of you, it requires a very, strong person to be able to undertake all those kinds of hardships. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to those, you have to describe it in detail, and that is a little challenging. That takes most time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, totally agree there. Because you haven't been through the training, so it's sometimes difficult to understand what kind of stress you feel, what level of competitiveness there is, and a lot of other things about the academy. Yes, I think you've done a brilliant job there because you got it so
Thank you.
right. And also,
Thank
the
you.
book is very humorous, and I think you've done very well with military humor. A lot of instances that made me laugh. So I just want to know from you: does writing humor come naturally to you, or do you sometimes have to revisit the written passages and work on them a little bit more, and then try and make it more humorous? How does it work for you?
Uh, you know what? I love writing humor. At least I
Okay.
used to write only humor initially. I used to write the middles in the newspapers,
All
those
right.
little funny
Yes.
pieces
Yes.
that come in the center of the edit
Yes.
page.
Yes.
And I had written more than 500 such pieces. So basically,
Okay.
I started with the humor writing because I love humor and I find humor helps human beings cope with anything in life. It is, some integral part of us which either emerges or we suppress it. So when you have humor in your life, life seems so much easier. Each struggle seems so, easy. So I gravitate towards humor. If you see all the military books that I have done, have
Mm-hmm.
dollops of humor. It's a whole lot of humor, in fact, whether it's boot spills or on the double or no margin. No margin for error is such a serious book because it
Yes.
deals with the Bombay attacks.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yet,
Mm-hmm.
when I rewind to the early part of that protagonist's life, it's
Mm-hmm.
only fun. It's a whole lot of humor. So I tend to gravitate towards humor, and it doesn't. Uh, I don't think is difficult to write if one really has that point of view. But yes, you do, like any other book, you do revisit, you do add portions, and you
Yes.
do improve upon things.
Yes, 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 yes. That's how I think. Yes, I think all of us revisit the passages we have written and then rework and try to make them the best possible. So, was it the best
Absolutely.
compliment? Was it the best compliment you received about any of your books? Was it about humor? The best compliment that you received on any of your books?
See,
Was it
the
related?
best compliment yeah, I think it was, I still get those
Mm-hmm.
from boys who want to join the army.
Okay.
And I am so, so touched. They come up to me and they say, Ma'am, you have written Boots, Bills, Berets. That
Mm-hmm.
has inspired us to join the army. So many past cadets and present cadets of NDA. Because, like I said, I live in an army complex and
Mm-hmm.
we have a whole lot of boys here. So,
Yes.
so many of them walk up to my house, ring the bell, and say, Ma'am, we heard you wrote the book Boots, Bills. I brought it for your, you know
Signature.
I
Okay.
want you to sign it. And then
Wow.
they'll come and take a selfie, and then they, reach out to me when they get into the academy. They also reach out when they pass from the academy. And it's so,
Mhm.
so very warm. It's such a warm feeling. You feel so inspired to do so much more because you
Yes.
are motivating someone to follow his dreams, or in
Right.
some way
Right.
you're touching their life. So I think
Yes.
that's the best compliment I have ever got. And I'm so, so grateful to God that such a, you know, lot of it has come my way.
Now, very soon, young girls are coming to knock at your door as well.
Hopefully so.
I'm sure they'll be so inspired by reading your book, and they would really want to be
Mm.
part of this great institution.
Thank you, thank you. Mm.
So, Tansha, you've written in so many different genres. Earlier, you started with nonfiction, then you moved to fiction. And when we read the reports these days, they say that in India, nonfiction sells better than fiction. So, have you ever considered or have you ever thought of moving back to nonfiction to reach a larger audience now that you're writing fiction?
I don't know. See, I did nonfiction
Mm-hmm.
and then I moved to fiction. And I'm pretty satisfied here right now. Yes, I
Okay.
know there is a lot of talk that nonfiction sells better, but I just want
Yes.
to ask people: don't you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy reading stories? Don't you like reading stories? If you do, why won't you pick up fiction?
Right.
Our lives are so interesting. Each one has a story to tell or share, and
Yes.
what writers are doing is just putting that on paper, and you see that you're watching stories on the television, on the
Yes.
OTT, and in the movies. So why not a book? So I don't understand this concept of non-fiction selling more than fiction, because
Mm.
I know people do pick up fiction. So
But
perhaps,
the statistics say that nonfiction
yeah,
sells better.
yeah,
So yes. Mhm.
perhaps they find that more inspiring or whatever.
Mhm.
So, but as far as I am concerned, I have done both, and
Okay.
I have seen the good side of each of those things. And I don't know that whether I'm ready to move back to nonfiction. But then, like I say never. Who
Yes,
knows what the
yes.
future holds?
Right, right, right. So, from the time that you first published your book, that was in 2000, and to the present day, we know that the publishing industry has changed a lot. So, what do you think are the major changes in these years from the time that you first published your book to today?
See, when I first published, I had no idea what the publishing industry was like.
Right.
But today,
Hmm.
anyone who wants to be a writer has a lot of information at disposal. There are book
Right.
agents. At
Yes,
my
yes.
time, I don't think there were any agents when I
Hmm.
started. And
Yes,
the only way one could do was, send a full printout of manuscript of say about 300 pages, and then, wait for the response, which came
yes,
by
yes,
snail mail. So that
yes,
was
yes,
the time when I started. And of course, there was the royalty, and all those factors were unknown to me.
yes,
I
yes.
did face a lot of challenges because of
Mhm.
those, and I got taken for a royal ride initially for my first
Whoa. Okay.
many books,
Okay.
and I was paid a pittance because I had no idea. And that time, one really feels, oh, your book is in print, and that's it. You're
Yes,
so
that's.
happy. You don't think that you really need to be paid for your efforts or the labor, that
Yes.
the work that you have put in,
Mhm.
painstakingly, that
Mhm.
needs to be paid for. So those ideas don't occur to you because in your excitement and enthusiasm,
Mhm.
you sort of
Mhm.
overlook those things. But today,
Mhm.
I think the current lot is much wiser. They know what they are stepping into, they know what to do. And then marketing was one thing that really wasn't done by the writer in those days.
Yes,
It
yes.
was generally done by the marketing department of the publishing industry,
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, the publisher. But
Right.
now more and more you see that the writer is becoming responsible for the marketing of her books.
Yes.
So to that extent, it has changed a lot. And also there were very few publishers, who published in English those days. There were just a handful of names. And
Mhm.
now I find there is much more scope. And there's also, Kindle publishing and all those self-publishing
Yes, yes,
channels
yes.
where, you can publish. So apart from the
Mm-hmm.
traditional publishers. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, I think the current lot is luckier.
Mm-hmm. So, do you also feel that today women's voices and women authors are heard more, seen more than say the earlier times? There's more recognition for
Not
it. There's more.
uh, again, it's happening in a phased manner. We
Okay,
have
okay.
had women writers for long. If you see the regional languages, you see that women writers have been there from
Yes, yes,
the early 19th century, but
yes, yes.
there were very few. There were very few, and not much importance or seriousness was given in
Mm-hmm.
to their books. But now,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there is more awareness, and we have so many award-winning women writers.
Yes, yes, yes,
The latest instance, for instance, the latest one who got the
yes,
Booker Prize. So,
yes.
there is much more awareness about the kind of women, I mean, writing that's flourishing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, yes, there's a lot more importance now given.
In fact, I think there is an award also constituted for women writers. It's called Author, right? AUTHER.
Yes, yes,
So for women
absolutely.
writers, for women authors.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of
Hmm.
changes have happened, and I think there's also a lot of discussion these days about traditional publishing versus uh, self-publishing. So. So, between traditional publishing and self publishing, if someone were to ask you, a budding writer were to ask you, which route do I go? What would your advice be to them?
To be very blunt,
Yeah.
if you are a good marketer, please go ahead and self publish because that requires that much more thrust. And that's one reason I cannot do it because I'm very poor at marketing my books. I belong to the old generation who thought it was not the business of the writer. But now
Yes, yes,
suddenly we find that we are forced to do it. So we're not
yes.
good at it. But
Mm-hmm.
for the younger lot who
Yes.
are more market savvy, I think they could look at the self-publishing, wherein you are the sole master of what choose to
Great.
publish. You can price your book and do whatever you want. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that is a very good option.
Mm-hmm. So that means youngsters or young budding authors or writers usually think that it's good to have your networking in publishing houses or perhaps visit or be part of literature festivals. So would you advise that they go for them, or does it help or does it not help being part of
I don't
literature
think
festivals? It
I don't
helps.
think it
It
helps,
does.
Sajita,
Okay.
because
Okay.
it is your work.
Mm-hmm.
The publisher will take your book depending on your work, not on your
Yes.
networking, right?
Right, 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 right. Yes, yes. All right. So I'm sure there's probably one of the important things that every budding writer, I mean, everyone who wants anyone who wants to be published is, I think, also to read. All right. So all writers, I think, read a lot before they actually sit down and write. So now let's ask about Tanushree, the reader. Now these days we have digital publishing like Kindle, and then there is your print book, and then there is audiobook. So which out of these modes of reading do you prefer?
I prefer books, the print version any day. And the feeling of holding a book in your hand, sitting
Yes.
somewhere outside and just relaxing and it's just a different feeling. I don't get that. I have Kindle and I
Hmm.
have audio, but you see
Okay.
that is only because of the space constraint. Because I
Right.
read a lot,
Yes.
I buy a lot of books, and
Okay.
storing them is a real, though I give them away, I donate a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
still there are constraints. So that's where Kindle comes in. And
Mm-hmm.
audio, I don't know, I'm not yet tuned into audio as such.
Okay, but audio I think works well if you're going for when you're going for a walk or something, and you can keep listening to her, or maybe when you're
Absolutely.
driving.
Yeah, it
Oh, okay.
has its advantages, I don't deny that. I have
Yes.
to get to it.
All right. Okay. Now, three of your books are being made as web series: Boots, Bells, Berets, the this one, The Girls in Green, and yeah, A Closet Full of
A closet.
Skeletons. Right. So tell us something about what has the progress been? Are you doing the screenplay? Would like to know about that.
No, I'm not doing the screenplay because I
Hmm.
feel that's another specialized line
Right.
which
Right.
needs a lot of training and skill. And
Hmm.
I'm not equipped to do that. And I wouldn't like to start something which I don't feel very comfortable with. So I'm quite happy being where I am. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, as far as the progress is concerned, I have
Hmm.
no idea because an author simply signs the contract and thereafter the ball is in the producer's court.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yes, I am
Hmm.
told that they are being made, so I have to be patient. I'm often asked, what is the state? When is it happening? Where is it
Hmm.
being shown? When? So I have no answers to that yet. But hopefully, in the near future.
All right. We look forward to that. I'm sure they'll make very
Thank you.
interesting translations. I mean, not
Thank you.
translation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, what are you currently writing, Tanshi? Because I'm sure you have a lot of books in the pipeline. What are you currently writing? And tell us something about that.
I'm actually editing my next book,
All
and it
right.
should be out before the end of the year. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
very complex book in the
Okay.
sense that there are three voices. It's
Mm-hmm.
written in three different protagonist voices, and
Okay.
that covers a huge span. It has to do with freedom struggle and
Okay.
a whole lot of, so it covers something like from the 1920s to the 1980s. That
That's
huge
vast.
span of changes,
Oh, I
political
see.
and cultural, and the protagonist's lives and all. So it's a very,
Mm-hmm.
very complex book, and it has really required me a lot of time. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
editing that, which is a humongous job
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I ended up writing more than about 1.25 lakh words, and
Oh my God,
now
that's a term.
I have to prune it.
Okay.
And you know how difficult that can be. The
Yes,
worst
yes,
part is,
yes.
pruning your story.
Yes, yes, yes. Because as a writer, you fall in love with your own words and your own passages, your characters,
Absolutely.
and editing becomes very,
Yes.
very difficult.
Very
Okay.
difficult. Mm.
So, so Tanshri, would you let's see if we have got questions. Yes, we do have a question from Deepak Rao. He says, "You write in different genres, which is not so easy. What are the challenges you face while writing books of different genres, and how do you handle these challenges?"
Thank you, Deepak. I think you've asked a very, very difficult question because the answer to that itself is a big challenge. You see, writing in a single genre makes it much easier to my mind because you get used to writing those kind of, your approach is the same even though the story may be different. You have done research. Say, when I'm writing crime, I have to only research about crime. And over a period of time, I think it becomes easier when you just keep writing crime, crime, crime. You know how it will fall, what the readers expect, and what you are supposed to write. But when you step into different genre, it is like stepping, a hopscotch, a game of hopscotch. You are hopping from one end to the other. So suddenly you decide, okay, I'm going to write military. Now you have to do your research in a different manner altogether. Your mindset has to change altogether. So if you were writing crime, you have a certain way of addressing issues. And when you write military, you have another different way of addressing. You have to, so what I do is I do face a lot of challenges switching from genre to genre. But what I do is I take a little break and then I go to the next one. And generally, I don't like to repeat the same genre because I feel I'll be repeating myself. And that is one of the reasons I find that writing in different genre gives me a fresh perspective. It gives me a whole lot of new challenges. And having said that, I really love the challenges.
Okay, wonderful. So I think Deepak, Tanushree has answered your question very well, detailed answer. Let's see if you've got more questions from viewers. Aditya says, "Great conversation, ma'am. Superb plot. How real life events influence your writing? How real life events influence your writing?" Aditya.
Thank you, Aditya. I think real life incidents play a big role in writing. And one of the things is that when you write, you can place your characters and your protagonists in a certain situation, and you can compare it with the real life situations and people. You know how a person A would react to a certain situation, and you can actually base your protagonist on person A, because then you will be very clear about how your protagonist is going to, react. So I don't know really whether you have understood what I'm trying to say, but the thing is, yes, I derive a lot from my real life situations and
Yes,
experiences.
I think many most writers do draw a lot from from experiences that they themselves have had. So I think it's time to wind up our session, Tanushree, and it was wonderful as always talking with you and chatting about your book, The Girls in Green, and so many other things about you as well. And thank you, Kalinga Literature Festival, for this wonderful opportunity to be in conversation with Tanushree. Thank you to all the viewers who joined in and who asked those nice questions to Tanushree. Thank you.
Thank you, Sajita. It was a pleasure. I love chatting with you, especially because you know so much about armed forces and writing as well. And of course, thanks to the Kalinga Lit Fest, which brought us to this platform together and gave us the opportunity to talk about everything that we wanted to. We could have
Yes.
talked on for 1 more hour. That's besides the point.
Right, right, right.
And thank you everyone who joined us and us your time and lovely questions. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you once again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.